Russell Westbrook is going to miss some chunk of this first round series against the OKC Thunder. And that is, of course, a big blow to the Houston Rockets. He has a strained quad, and quad injuries are always kind of weird. Doing a quick Google search, a strained quad can sometimes take a week, sometimes 2, sometimes up to 6 weeks. So we're going to have to see there. So hopefully Houston can get him for at least a few games in this series. Who knows, but let's talk about this thing. So the first thing that I want to think about is what happens with Steven Adams in this series. Now, before Westbrook was hurt, I would imagine that one of the options could have been you put him on Westbrook in the half court, you have him sag off of Russ, and you dare Russ to take jump shots, and you hope that you can kind of stop him from getting to the basket. Now, that's not going to be a thing. We imagine now Harden is going to have the ball every single possession when he's in the game, and that's another thing to think about is his minutes. Because before, D'Antoni could stagger him and Russ, so we'll have to see if Houston can be successful in the minutes without Harden, especially because OKC's got a lot of good players. But to get back to the Adams thing, I think now they're forced to just put him on whoever the Rockets are going to have starting over Westbrook, whether it's Austin Rivers or is Eric Gordon playing. He played against the Pacers, so it could be him. Whoever it is, the guy's going to be standing at the three-point line. We all know this, right? And I guess you put Adams on the weakest shooter, whoever it may be, and then you hope that he can still find some sort of a way to be an inside presence and a rim protector. I mean, it might have to be a bit of a team rim protection thing, because there's going to be times where Adams is just going to be stuck on a shooter unless you're going to try to play some weird zone defense. But even then, you're going to have to be really good when it comes to closing out, and maybe they're going to be trapping Harden a lot, whether it's in a type of zone or just in general, and you can kind of create chaos on the floor, and maybe that could be better for Steven Adams to find a real place defensively on this thing. But you got to assume that the Rockets are going to dare Adams to defend on the perimeter, right? Whether it's getting switched onto Harden or having him have to move across screens, of which OKC will switch, but it's just getting that big guy moving along the perimeter. And I think Adams is equipped more than your average big guy to deal with that stuff, but it's still not his natural game. So I really don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if Adams finds a way to survive defensively in the series, great. I mean, if somebody's not shooting well from 3, or if you just want to play the percentages and put him on like Austin Rivers and dare Rivers to shoot, because I think he would be the guy, maybe that's going to be successful. But also, Steven Adams might get played off the floor. I think we got to accept that one as well. And I say all this about daring Aaron Gordon or Austin Rivers to shoot. He still shot 36% on 4 threes a game this year. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but that's part of the allure of the Rockets, right, is that they force teams to make tough decisions with their big guys. So we're just going to have to see. Now, on the other side of the floor, can Steven Adams make up for some of those things through offensive rebounds and just scoring inside a lot and all that? I don't know. I mean, Steven Adams is not a great offensive player. I think he does well with what he's got, but in terms of post moves or shooting or ball handling or anything, he's just not that guy. So I don't know if he's going to be able to make the Rockets pay like that for being small. Now, maybe as an offensive rebounder, okay, but I don't know if that's going to be a big enough of a difference given how many threes Houston's going to shoot, and again, the potential of Adams having a tough time staying out there. Now, I did mention trapping Harden a little bit there. I should really just extend that out to how often is OKC just going to straight up double team James Harden and dare everybody else to do something? It's probably going to happen a few times. I think the ways to counter that if you're Houston are you can bring a really high screen up to help out Harden, like around the half-court line or so. The other thing would be Harden passes the ball off to somebody and then gets kind of a running head start without the ball. We could even see some James Harden off-ball sets. There was one that I remember seeing where he didn't have to move too much, because Harden, he's not going to be running full-blown floppy sets or anything. but you could try some quick little flare screens for the guy just to get his momentum going, whether it's then for a three or something. There's ways around OKC just throwing double team after double team at Harden, and we're going to have to see if Houston's able to deal with that. Now, of course, there's more players in this series than James Harden and Steven Adams, so when we think about OKC's chances of defending Harden kind of well just straight up, I mean, between Chris Paul, Shea, and Lou Dort, I think they've got a chance. Now, no one can defend Harden one-on-one consistently, but if you're able to not foul him on the step-back threes, you do at least an okay enough job of not fouling him on the drives. It's going to happen, but there's a difference between keeping it kind of under control and him just killing you on every single drive, you know what I mean? Then that's going to go a long way. I think something that OKC could certainly try is when you bring the help, you bring it from someone who's kind of behind James Harden more so than from the corner. Now, that requires a smart defense, but I mean, what else are you going to do? Like, James Harden's a great passer. You can't just leave PJ Tucker or Robert Covington open on the corners all day. We know what happens in those scenarios, right? But to get back to it, like, can Shea stay in front of Harden? I mean, no, but more than the average NBA player? Yeah, perhaps. I would say the similar thing for Chris Paul and Lou Dort as well. We'll eventually get to how OKC will play on offense in this series, but to me, the heart of this is really just, can you slow down Houston's offense? And I know Westbrook isn't out there, but if I haven't made it obvious enough, I still think Houston can win this series without Westbrook, just because of their spacing and Harden and the amount of threes they're going to attempt. I mean, that should be mentioned as well. Like, for any conversation you want to have about the Rockets in a playoff series, they're going to shoot so many threes that they could lose everything and still win the game. You can kill them on the boards. They can commit way more turnovers, way more fouls. Their transition defense could be suspect. But if they make 25 threes, that's it. Now, I think another thing to talk about is OKC's potential to play small with the Rockets if Adams is really forced to play, to sit on the bench. So I don't know who their small ball center would be. I mean, maybe Nerlens Noel could just survive in that environment. I don't think he's as smart of a defender as Adams or anything, but he's more athletic. Could Gallo play center? He is 6'10". He's not a bad athlete. I mean, if you're throwing a lineup out there of Shea, CP, Schroeder, Gallo, and Lou Dort, you might have a chance to hang with Houston if you just think that you are forced to go small. I guess I should also mention Andre Roberson, who came back. I forgot about him for most of this because the guy, he barely played the season, and who knows if he's really ready to go like that, but he could certainly give Harden some fits if he's able to be himself. And I understand Roberson's limitations on offense, but if he could really slow down Harden, then that trumps not all, but some of the problems he would give you on the offensive side of the floor, I imagine. So yeah, I definitely have some questions about how OKC is going to be able to defend Houston between Adams as well as do they have the perimeter defenders that you need to at least create some resistance for Harden and not foul him every time? And the answer I would come up with is I think they're better equipped than most teams. So we can go with that. Now if we can go to the other side of the floor. Well, actually, if Westbrook comes back. So if Westbrook comes back, then I think we might see the put your center on Westbrook in the half court and just sag off of him thing with Adams. If it's not going to be that, I don't totally know what you'd do. Now let's talk about OKC on offense. First question I have is, how much is Schroeder going to play? I know they go to the Schroeder lineup, fourth quarter, and it plays in other instances, but it's not what they start the games with, and I just wonder if for the postseason, if you don't want to do the whole cute, Schroeder comes off the bench thing a lot, or if it's more so, all right, Schroeder, just get the hell in there already. I wouldn't be shocked if Schroeder was starting by a certain point in the series. We'd have to see how Lou Dort is doing as the fifth starter for them, but I wouldn't put it past Billy Donovan to decide by game 2 or 3 that Schroeder just has to start and he's got to play 36 to 40 minutes like everybody else in the starting five. So the first thing I think about if Steven Adams is not going to be played off the floor is the Chris Paul, Steven Adams pick and roll, or whoever. Chris Paul, Shea, Schroeder, they got a lot of ball handlers. I assume Houston switches a lot of those, which then leads me back to my, can Steven Adams make him pay on the block? I don't know. And between Covington and Tucker and Harden's been okay, and Rivers and Gordon, like there isn't an obvious mismatch. Now, I think Chris Paul can beat any of those guys off the dribble a few times a game. Same thing for Shea, same thing for Schroeder. But it's not going to be like a slow 7-footer switched onto guards, get beat every single time sort of thing. So that's going to be interesting. I think, well, I don't think this, I know this. The Rockets are not going to defend Lou Dort at all. Another reason why getting Schroeder in there may become a necessity. I think the Rockets are going to trap and double team a lot as well. I think it's going to be mainly switches, but I think occasionally they will really hound the OKC ball handlers. And I mean, the Thunder have the passers to beat that. I mean, Chris Paul has never seen a trap or a double team that he didn't know what to do with. So it will end up in the open guy's hands. But again, if that open guy is Lou Dort, then we're going to have some problems. Or if it's Terrence Ferguson, Abdul Nadir, or whoever. Now, Darius Bazley's interesting because he was knocking down threes pretty wild past couple games. So that could be interesting. I guess we're 11 minutes in before I make the Bazley take. I mean, you know, he's a good athlete. He's got good size. He's been making shots. If he can keep that up, he's got potential to be a real piece in this series for OKC. I just don't know if he's ready for the moment. Now, can Shea or Schroeder deal with the Rockets' sometimes aggressive or at least just switching defense? I think so. They're not going to be as good as Chris Paul at it. I could definitely see some times where Shea is being double-teamed by, let's say it's Covington and Austin Rivers or something, or Harden or whoever. And I could picture him getting overwhelmed in that moment. I mean, Shea is a good player, no doubt. And I think he's got a lot of room to still get better. But in terms of playmaking, you know, he's not the best. We can say that. Hell, I could even picture some scenarios where the Rockets go under screens on Shea. I mean, he's been a very good mid-range shooter throughout his career. His three is kind of iffy, but, you know, Houston, they're all about the math, and maybe they would look at it as, okay, if you're going to try to, like, if you're going to look to beat us through Shea Gilgeous-Alexander mid-range jumpers, then maybe we're going to be okay with that. Now, Chris Paul mid-range jumpers, that's a different story, but again, I just feel like the Rockets, they're going to do everything in their power to not allow Chris Paul any feet of space off of pick and rolls, you know? Mainly through switching, if you ask me. Now, I've talked about the switching enough. I should probably get to Gallo now. Gallo is someone who could beat some switches, if you ask me. I think he's got the potential to score on, like if Austin Rivers ends up on Gallo or Eric Gordon, although Eric Gordon's kind of a tough post defender. Harden's a tough post defender as well. So it's not like there's a million dudes, but there's some guys that I think Gallo could have some success on. You know, Daniel House potentially. I mean, Daniel House is a good perimeter defender, but has he proven himself as a low post defender like that? I don't totally know. I guess the other thing that OKC could try is you attack Harden all the time on offense. Now, they're probably going to put Harden... Would they put Harden on Lou Dort? I feel like they could at times to preserve his energy, and then when Schroeder's out there, Harden's going to have to defend somebody eventually, but if you go at Harden a lot, then you could just wear him down over the span of the series, because he's going to have to do a lot on offense, especially without Westbrook. Now, I think OKC, they could try some off-ball stuff. I don't know how much they're really going to want to do it. I mean, they were one of the most prevalent pick-and-roll teams this season. They run about 25 a game. About 23% of their plays are pick-and-rolls, so it's kind of their bread and butter. But some off-ball stuff, I think you could beat Houston a little bit more with that, just because it forces them to have more of a real defensive principle. And, between D'Antoni and... well, mainly D'Antoni. I just don't know if Houston is built for that level of defense. I mean, they can certainly switch, and they got good defenders, but are they going to be able to communicate like a team like Toronto could in the scenario of which somebody's open, we got to close out, now another guy's open, you got to pick that guy up? Like, can Houston do that stuff? If you really start moving bodies off the ball and stuff, I don't know. And I think between Gallo and Shea and Schroeder, you've got guys who can do that. I don't know if Chris Paul can really do that at this age or if he just wants to at all. But I think there's some potential there. Another thing that you could do to combat Houston's switching is you could try some slip screens. So you bring the guy up, act like he's about to set a screen, Houston gets ready to switch, and then the guy cuts to the basket. And then from there, someone's going to have to bring help, and then you probably got somebody open. So yeah, now again, it should be said, if Westbrook is playing in this, or when he's playing, I don't know, then you imagine OKC's just going to dare him to take jump shots all day long. As in, they would leave him open off the ball sometimes and just dare him to take as many threes or mid-rangers as possible. And can you have success doing that? And in the first chunk of the season, teams did, and the second chunk, they didn't. So take that for what you will. But again, I don't know when we're going to see Westbrook. I think Russ defensively, he could certainly be okay enough in the switching scheme. But in terms of, again, the idea of forcing Houston to do more than just simply switch or double team, I think Westbrook is also susceptible to being beaten in that sort of an environment. So yeah, I think I'm ready to make a prediction. So with Westbrook, I would have predicted Houston without much doubt. Without Westbrook, I think I'm actually still picking Houston. This may be seen as a bit of a hot take, but I'm just picturing the Rockets with their being spaced out like crazy, and I'm not confident that Steven Adams is going to find a place in the series like that. On top of the switching, which counteracts OKC's go-to, which is pick and rolls. On top of, I just trust James Harden to play great. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Houston. The fact that we're not doing home and a road, that might throw off like the games. Like maybe a typical series that would go 6 is just going to be a sweep now. We don't know. It's going to be impossible to tell. But I'm just going to go Houston in 6 or 7, I guess. I will be honest, I'm a little disappointed to see this series right now. I mean, I'm not, because it's going to be really fun, but I'm a little disappointed because I feel like with how fun OKC was this year and how much credit we gave Chris Paul, I feel kind of bad predicting he's going to lose in round 1. History will suggest that this season wasn't amazing for CP, but it was. But them's the breaks, man. You got Houston, so... Now, of course, I could just be wrong and OKC will win the series. Oh, and also, by the way, if you made it to the end of the video, I uploaded a second channel vid where I talk about Toph from The Last Airbender and her character and stuff, and yeah, that's in the description, pinned comment, all that good stuff.